So
You, Mark Lindsay, me, Eloy Escajedo are initialized, as it read over there, initializing
hmm
launch. We are live. Woo!
well, one of us is. I'm just here to
Um,
take up space.
what's that?
I said I'm just here to take up space.
Well, no, that's not true.
Sure, I am.
Well, it's literally true that
Yeah,
you
I
take
have.
up
I'm, I'm,
space.
I'm, I'm filling in this little rectangle. It's not quite a box. So me and my rectangle, we're comfortably. I like it in my little rectangle. Folks know me here.
Me and my rectangle.
Yeah, I like it. All my stuff's here, and my wife lives here. What's to complain about?
I'm going to tell you something, not to do with oils. I'm going to tell you something. And this might deviate everything we were talking about before, anyways, but I don't care because it just popped into my head.
Okay.
And obviously, if it pops into your head, it matters. Um, the first time I heard the song, I Don't Want to Set the World Afire,
hmm
was that old timey. I think it was Bing Crosby. It could have been somebody. I don't know. But it's that monophone sound. I don't want to set
Yeah.
the world. That old timey one. But the context was it was clipped back in the 80s onto a Megadeth thrash metal song. So when I turned on the album or at that song, it would go, I don't, and then it was like a bomb. And the drums and this and that. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to love going to that song, not for the main song,
hmm
but for the old timey.
Just for that entry there, yeah.
Yeah, because I just liked it. I liked the thing. So it was. So I have fond memories. And for some, so that's a reference point
hmm
of something that existed on its own with nothing to do with thrash metal.
Yeah.
That one now has a my time has
hmm
that connection, which I find fascinating as heck.
There was a song in the 60s, may have been early 70s. I may have to look it up. And I don't remember the name of the guy who sang it, but he sang it in one of those paper megaphones. Sang it through one of those into the mic, and it sounded like one of those old time
I love it.
1920s tunes. It was called Westminster Cathedral. And I'm going to have to look it up because I haven't thought of that song until you just started talking about it. Um, let's see here. It was by the New Vaudeville Band in 1966. And it won the Grammy Award for Best Contemporary Song. I did not know that. Winchester Cathedral, not Westminster. Winchester Cathedral. Jeez. The New Vaudeville Band, they were called. I'll find it and link it.
Okay, that'll be interesting. Was the whole song sung like that?
Yes. Here's a video clip of them singing it on the Ed Sullivan Show. Winchester
Um,
Cathedral, you're bringing me down. You stood and you watched as my baby left town. Sung through a megaphone.
I like it. I like that. It's got a carnival, you know, out on the lawn, walking about, and the guy
hmm
standing up on the podium, or come right up, step right up, everybody. That kind of vibe.
Yep. Yep. Step right up. Every spend $1. Go away, boy, you bother me. Step back, kid.
So on this same thing, well,
hmm
attached with music,
Uh-oh.
Robbie Krieger,
hmm
the guitarist of
The
The Doors.
doors. Yeah.
He's older than dirt right about now. Older than dirt.
He has not aged well,
No,
like I have. Yeah.
no. He didn't age well back in the '60s. He was already not aged well.
Yeah.
Um, but the guy, honestly, is a creative force to be reckoned
Mm-hmm.
with. Um, he contributed some of the most like hard hitting tracks that the Doors produced.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just Jim Morrison. A lot of people think that Jim Morrison, but Krieger did a lot of hit songs. In any event, I forget the name of the band he has now, but
Mm-hmm.
he's decided to shift into instrumental stuff. But you know that it wasn't '60s, quite '60s, but in the '70s, going into the '80s, there was this sort of jazz fusion, rock fusion, sort of like instrumental stuff
Yeah.
that had keyboards and all the cool things. Well, actually, there was some in the '60s, but um, he's doing that. And I listened to a few of his tracks because I saw an interview of him with the guy from uh, the Smashing Pumpkins.
Mm-hmm.
He's got he's got a show now, an interview show,
Oh, okay.
and it's very insightful. He interviews musicians, and it's another take that that's different than Rick Beato.
Mm-hmm.
And and dude, it's insightful as hell, the interview, but the music is freaking groovy as hell.
Hmm.
It's got rock, it's got jazz, a lot of organs. His guitar is riffing with sort of the Doors vibe and stuff. That crunchy guitar,
Ouch. Yeah.
really badass. So the point is this: that there's people from back in the day still doing it.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
not just the Stones.
Yeah. I mean, well, you got to think about it, man. I'm 64, and all of the people that I looked up to are basically in their 80s if they haven't passed on. You know, Kenny Rogers passed when he was 80 years old, maybe 81. I don't really remember. Um, and it's kind of strange when I hear, oh, Robert Plant's doing this. It's like he's still alive. It's like, holy cow, man! How old is he? He should be in a rocking chair by now, dude.
Yeah,
It's strange to think about it. I don't like being the old man of the family. I really don't. I don't like it. It's
yeah,
That's
but
not how it's supposed to be. You know.
you're the wise shepherd.
They know that absolutely not. I mean, I'll give you free advice. I'm not saying it's going to be good. I'm just saying I ain't going to charge you for it. You know,
Uh,
because my heart is 12 years old, my brain is 35 years old, my body is 96 years old. You know, and we have a food fight every waking moment. So
so I'm gonna share the thing, but that we were talking about before. But before that, one person that has passed on
mm,
that was significantly important to me
mm.
musically, listening, understanding, lyrically and musically was Sly Stone.
One of the more underrated performers and songwriters.
There was something profound when I heard his. There was so this man, this musician. Obviously, he was odd the way because he was out there in terms of clothing and stuff. But there was a
Yeah.
spirit that he infused in his music.
Well, then the clothes was all a part of that, man. You know
He
the.
he emanated
Hmm.
love and understanding,
Yeah.
peace and goodwill.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of great songs.
Hmm.
Um,
The outrageousness was all a part of that. The I don't know that the music would have been as meaningful without that persona. You know, I am everyday people. Yeah, yeah. And you know, it needed that. It needed that outrageousness.
that song, "Summertime Fun,"
Uh
those
huh.
summer
Summer
days,
days. Yep.
dude. I just got chills right now just for a moment, just to say, so I, I have to be honest, but yet contained. The music soundtrack of my life um, is attached to my personal things, but to my understanding of this country,
Mhm.
and I'll tell you, it very meaningful, special stuff. And I do feel slightly injured and saddened inside because of just the world in current things. But I just wanted to say that just because I had to. But those tracks are very special. They make me chill, goose pimples automatically when I hear them. Um, and I just wish sometimes that we could grab some sort of line and yank it forward into the now and say, you know,
Yeah.
and
Well,
but that's not possible.
dude, as you and I were talking backstage, that's the definition of nostalgia. The feeling, maybe not necessarily the reality, because there was a lot of messed up stuff going on back then too. But I'm with you. There's a lot of stuff, big and small, that I'd like to go back and sample again, just because, you know. So
Yeah.
Greg says, much more to my taste than Stone was Rick Derringer, who passed last week. Yeah, Rick Derringer, we lost another one.
What was he?
Rick Derringer, probably, well, he was known for a few things. He had a top 10 hit with Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, and he also played lead guitar with Edgar Winter and Johnny Winter. Mainly Edgar Winter. He was the guitarist in Frankenstein and Free Ride, that whole scene.
I,
Edgar Winter was another one. He was a musical savant. The man could play just about any kind of song, or excuse me, any kind of instrument. He'd play drums, or he'd play keyboards, or he'd play saxophone. I mean, he was just all over the place.
back in the, I think. Can anybody out there say type in and search? I could do it on my own, but I'm asking them to be Google. Um, when Paul McCartney came out with his album "Memory Almost Full,"
Oh man,
which was somewhere in the 2000s. I think it was in
yeah. The only um, everybody gonna dance around tonight. I think that
that
was the name of that song.
that one. Yeah, where he's on the thing. Ghosts are floating on the room.
Never saw the video, but heard the song many times. We had at the casino I worked at, we had kind of modern ish music piped in. And I was the shift manager, and there was one of the change people, Kim. Every time that song came on, we had a thing. It was just, in this casino, you were out on the floor acting goofy and doing things to get the crowd jazzed up. And every time that song came on, didn't matter where we were, we both would just gravitate to this big main long entryway and just start. I mean, she's at one end, I'm at the other end, and we just start dancing with one another. And eventually, by that, we'd time it to where we were together and held hands together up above our head, and kind of danced in a circle, one rotation. And when that song ended, we would let go and just start clapping our hands and going nuts. People looking at us and like, "What the hell are you doing?" But it was fun, you know.
It was a fun song to listen to too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyways, when that album came out,
Mm-hmm.
Memory Almost Full, I was somewhere either in my early 30s or still in the 20s.
Hmm.
Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. I was probably 31 or 28. I don't somewhere within that spectrum. Um,
Were you bigger than a bread box?
I'm trying to calculate out, but so I was into that album, and
Uh-huh.
it had on the cover a chair, and it was a white background.
Hmm.
And I had a friend back then, Chuck Stewart. He's still a friend. And 2007.
2007.
Thank
Okay.
you, Steve. Okay, so
Hey,
my
wait, whoa,
friend,
whoa, whoa! We got Steve to look up some music.
he's
Steve,
the
he's not a he's. You're not napping, Steve. What's going on?
he's like Harneal AI. The
Yeah.
Harneal.
I'm going to use that. Harneal AI. Yeah.
Um. So my buddy and I, which he was an experienced airboat captain.
Mhm.
Like he was of the Everglades. Like he knew his way around.
Mhm.
And we used to go out on the boat at night, and you can't see squat, and just dark everywhere, and trees, branch. You don't know what's what. But they would take a helmet, like those construction or miners' helmets, with the lights on the front.
Yeah.
They would wire it to the batteries,
Uh-huh. Oh.
and they could see. What do you
Oh
think
yeah.
of that? Like they would just so what you as a passenger would see is like this tunnel light,
Hmm.
darkness everywhere,
Yeah.
unless you looked up in the sky. It was crazy. But anyways, he was totally into music. We went to a couple of concerts together as well.
Hmm.
Um, um, so he and I started talking about this memory almost full,
Hmm.
and we were sitting maybe at lunchtime or something. I was sitting down, and I'm like, dude, I love that album, but I gotta be honest with you. I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember the details, but I know the sentiment and the thing. But I gotta be honest with you, dude. Like, I don't like that title for that album because to me, remember, I was like 20 something, whatever the age I was, because it almost sounds like in my mind his memory is almost full. To me, my interpretation was that this was like his swan song, like he was on
Hmm.
the cuff, he was on the borderline, he was like, hey, this is I can't go, I can't truck, and I didn't like that concept. And he turned around to me and he said, oh, really? Because I thought that he just meant his cell phone, his memory is almost full.
Hmm.
Which
I,
in
I I related it to computer. Yeah.
Okay, so but the point is, I think, I don't know, I'd have to look, that Paul McCartney's intention was closer to his, and what you just said, to his, than what I'm saying.
Hmm.
But based on where I was at in my mind and the situation, just whatever the consequences of everything, and just me thinking and looking at Paul McCartney and thinking, because when I was a kid, I used to listen to Paul, I used to watch concerts, like, just, on
Yeah.
TV, they would, like, he was like someone to look like up to and say, damn, look at all this music. You were invested. And then now at this stage, you see him older and you're still young and you're thinking, man,
Hmm.
memory almost full. Come on, Paul, can you lighten up a little bit? But that's not what he was saying.
Yeah.
And since then, he wrote and put out tons of freaking awesome albums, actually.
Yep. Yeah. I
Like a
mean,
lot of them.
dude, I remember the original Beetle cuts, haircuts, and the boots, and the whole thing, the whole. I don't know if you would call that mod or rocker. Probably
He's a
the rock,
mocker.
probably the rocker look. I don't know. Jamie Page is out there. Would you have called the Beatles? Were they mods or were they rockers back then?
They were
You know.
rockers. They weren't mods. Or were they mods and not
Well,
rockers?
mods wore the nice suits and what have
Yeah.
you, and rode around
Eric
on
Clapton
this.
was a mod
Hmm. And yeah,
early on.
yeah. So I don't know. We didn't get the whole mod or rocker thing here, really. you know.
No, we didn't have that variation.
But the mods basically took over. I think they won the style war. But what can I say?
Yeah.
Then Lemmy Kilmister came along and just shredded that entire idea.
Yeah. Well, there's no comparison to the music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
No,
50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
a little bit of the '90s scattered here and there, sprinkled around a little bit, like a little bit of seasoning, you
Yeah.
know.
It was
Mm,
tipping over
mm,
the precipice at that time,
yeah.
but
Mm,
we still had good stuff going on.
yep. Yep.
But
Guys like Kenny Wayne Shepherd and them, they were keeping it going. So
so okay, so let me share what. So
okay.
this might be a little, but I'll say it. So I've been using AI
Hmm.
in the ways that I've explained to you.
Hmm.
Before AI, I didn't have the ability to explore and be given answers without emotional blockage that humans carry, getting tired, natural human thing, nor my fear of insulting or pushing limits and going over the edge, nor time constraints.
Yeah.
I have spent hours
Hmm.
exploring a topic and looking for repeatedly finding ways around a topic
Hmm.
to test it to see whether it's valid or not, um, if I'm missing something or how to see it different, my perspective, how's my perspective different than other people's. So I'll say, what would be the average perspective concerning this topic we're talking about compared to my take
Hmm.
on it? And it'll say, on average, and then it'll scale it. And then I'll ask, what would a person like Plato
Hmm.
think about what I'm saying or suggesting? And it'll take all of Plato's thinking and work with that in order to, give
Yeah.
you within the constraints of what Plato would say.
Hmm.
What would so and so person say? What would these people say? Over regular questions, um,
Yeah.
like I've been hitting throwing rocks at. Anyways, the point is this: in these past few, because I think it was January when I got the computer that you sent me,
Uh huh.
so it's been like 4, 5, 6 months that I've actually initiated this thing. I've been able to this self realize things that I about myself based on me asking and pushing constantly,
Hmm.
and then me stopping and saying, well, wait, why am I asking this? And then I'd ask it, is it odd that I asked this? Is it? No, it's not odd. I said, yeah, but is it do you typically get this question? Well, no, I don't typically get this question, um, but it's within the boundaries of human questioning things. But depending on the topic, things would explode in other areas or
Hmm.
in other results. And what I mean by explode is that it would make me realize things, and then I'd ask it on top of that and stuff. So, anyways, um, I do not, according to AI, and I've pushed it, and I'm not. I do not think the way I think normal. Not bad or good or indifferent. I just don't, according to it and the input that I've given it to see what it says. I don't. I'm not. Um, I don't stop. I don't stop exploring a thing.
Hmm.
Even once the answer is given, I say, okay, that's great, but let's keep going. And that tendency, um, they call it curious, or a continuous, I try to work with. But here's the point: I've always known that I press further,
Hmm.
but I haven't really known. I just continuously inquire or push bounds. But I did it. But it put a mirror, and then I said, "Oh, whoa!" And so I'll tie it up with this. I had a conversation a few days ago with someone that everything I said was perceived as an attack by me,
Hmm.
or sort of an invasive act.
Hmm.
In conclusion, the way I go about looking at information, or inquiring, um, I think it's normal because it is to me. But because of that way of doing it, it's not to other people, generally speaking. And depending on the tolerance that other people have or not, or what they feel comfortable with or not, that I don't find any um, moral or ethical issue with. If I'm probing on something to do with whether it be politics, whether it be, yeah, I could have, yeah, I have emotional, this and that, but I don't see my interaction with a person talking about dangerous topics as reflecting on them and attaching it to them as if, oh, you don't see eye to eye to with, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I see it as two separate things. There are connections, but I see it as two separate. Like, we could talk about ancient Greek philosophy, and you don't agree that the Stoics were the ones, and I say this and that, and we can do that like forever and a day, arguing it, and it's like, how dare you, Mark, or this or that. But for me, it's not necessarily about you or me. It's about the idea. On average, that's the direction. Anyways, it was very enlightening, and what it did to me, what it's been doing, it's been allowing me to explore what I am doing actually and why. And I didn't know that before.
Well, why do
Not
you
here.
think you push so hard? Why do you think you push for other answers and other reasons?
According to it,
Well, no, no, no. I mean, according to you,
well, no,
why do you think you do that?
well, no, I agree with it because what I'm feeding it. It's anyways. It Some people have insatiable curiosity,
Yeah.
and some people organize thoughts in a layered way
Hmm.
that um, expands or doesn't stop. So if you take the topic of music,
Hmm.
and this one's one that's universally, as opposed to me buying an album from the Beach Boys back in the day
Yeah.
and listening to it for what it was, I wasn't satisfied with that. I read the liner notes, which other people do on average anyhow. But then I looked for books, which other people do anyhow. But then I wanted to deconstruct the songs, and I wanted to know when the recordings happened, and I wanted to know the relationships that they had amongst themselves, what were the arguments and problems that they had in order to accomplish a song, who were the backup musicians, who were, and just continues to, and then wait a second, who else played with them, what issues did the Beatles have with them, and it just keeps going and going and going and going and going and going and going and
Hmm.
going. It's like I'm mapping out this whole little world here over the Beach Boys,
Hmm.
and it keeps going. So, but imagine, so, and that's habitual.
Hmm.
It just is. But I didn't know. I wasn't self conscious. Like, hey, man, Why am I? I just did that because it's just my normal way of functioning.
Yeah.
But the insight is this: that I might be misunderstood as being malicious or insensitive or aggressive or invasive. It's not my intention. I'm just exploring. Let's all explore.
Hmm.
But it may not be perceived because other people have other methods that work for them, exploring the things that they intend.
Hmm.
And then I have a little bit of an extreme example of that. But my intent, and it might be misinterpreted as something that it's not, from from me. And so that realization was due to me pushing AI to explore. Now you could say, well, it's just what AI is saying, but that's not really the case. I'm inputting my experiences and I'm asking it questions according to what's in my head.
Hmm.
And it's gathering up answers according to the database that it has available,
Yeah.
and this, that, and the other. And each time it replies to me, I see that. And then I push against that. And then if I can't find reason to push up against it, then I'll say, okay, that's broadly in the right direction. But then multiply that by, and so basically, it's almost like sitting with an inexhaustible person next to you.
Yeah.
It's not a person, but the point is, it
Right.
communicates with you in English,
Hmm.
and it takes the form of human sentences.
Sure.
So you're able to, um, digest it, and the insights are just freaking crazy, dude. Um, and my biggest concern, or one of my concerns, is being misunderstood as having bad intent in what I in my exploration, this and that. Not that I'm a saint, I can get
Well, yeah.
pissy and this and that. That's not the case. I get pissy, and this and that. But the point is the worry. I mean, it's not like I'm losing sleep over it, but but because of this is the realization that and we can all be, and we all are to a degree, misunderstood for an actual good intention or neutral intention,
Yeah.
but not necessarily bad intention.
Right.
um and that's been insightful, dude.
A lot of that is in presentation. A lot of that is in the context. A
Yeah.
lot of that is, uh, somebody in a fit of pique will post something, and you'll, well, but wait a minute. It's like, no, I don't want to be questioned on this. You know, and there's no accounting for every individual's mood. Somebody might post something you think is lighthearted and fun, and they're not saying that at all. I got into a little bit of a very short snit with a guy who just, he I joked with him all the time. We kind of lost contact with one another, but he posted something about Texas barbecue is the best barbecue in the world. And okay, I'm not going to argue that point, but I just to kind of sting him a little bit. I said the only people who say that are the people who buy their barbecue and don't make their own. And he came back and he said, I said it's the best in the world. And I'm like, damn, dude. And about a minute and a half later, he took that entire post down. He did not want to be questioned, and he didn't want, me to needle him at all. So it's like, all right, relax, relax. But I'm thinking to myself, any of you folks from Kansas City or South Carolina want to chime in on this? Because I mean, down south, there were some real easy ways to start a fight. That's one of them. Talking smack about barbecue. The other one is talking smack about football teams, college football teams. You know, you will start a war. So,
Yeah.
uh, Jim Dockrell says, "Whoops, it just jumped. There it is. Even if you speak the same language, there can be misinterpretations if you don't have the same agreements on the vernacular. If you ask for a Kleenex and all I have is Scots, do I get you one?
Yeah.
Well, if you're civilized, you know what he means. Yeah, you get him one. But you can walk up with a box and say, sorry, dude, ain't got no Kleenex. All I got is Scots. Will that do? You know.
The language thing is one of the problems that we've touched on before, where the old one that we've run into a few times, where I'll say my argument is, and then you'll say, well, wait a second. You
Mm-hmm.
mean your thought or your theory or your, like, you'll use, there's another word you use, your not argument, you use another word with it.
Assertion.
Assertion, there's another one, but what my point, like, within that, but my tossing in of the word argument, I mean, it's not unheard of, but you
Right.
don't use it, or you haven't used it typically, because it's simply a choice
Mm-hmm.
that in
Well,
in your language that exists there, but
mm-hmm.
it has a double meaning. It has confrontation, as well, and it could have connotations of, like, people embroiled in
Well,
a.
yeah, and that's the way I see it. The word argument has there's an implied conflict, or maybe it's just inferred on my part. But to me, the word argument, it there's a little bit of conflict there.
Yeah, well, the severity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if, let's say, you take the word argument, and there's a scale of potential extreme case, what that refers to,
Mm-hmm.
or the less, aggressive one.
Right.
The extreme cases, I could picture somebody in some motel outside,
Mm-hmm.
outside, throwing the TV set over the thing because you stained the with cigarettes and such.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Body contact discussions. Yeah. There you go.
Right. So that's one. But the one that I lean on, or that I'm used to,
Mm-hmm.
is, or that I typically, is involves a exchange that might have, it involves, this is my presentation
Mm-hmm.
that I'm offering, and this presentation is my argument.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm making a case
Right.
for.
I can see that, my argument is in the case of for, and your argument is in the case of against. I tend to use the word position. This is
Position.
my position. You know,
Right.
I
So
think XYZ.
so your tendency
Mm-hmm.
within the palette of language that you have, plus the meanings that you attach to those
Mm-hmm.
words and sentences and so on, as opposed to mine, they overlap,
Mm-hmm.
but um, some words, even though it's the same English, it's the same
Mm-hmm.
meanings, but that scale of variation can. So, for instance, one time I used to work, um, going from store to store, and I would fill in the order sheets for pool supplies, from grocery store to grocery store across South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into a Publix down south close to Homestead, or in Homestead, and the manager In our conversation, I said, "Ma'am, with respect,"
Mm-hmm.
in the conversation, and that word lit her on fire. She, let's put it this way, it got to the point, even with me clarifying, I meant no disrespect. It just mean it's a sign of
Yeah, I was
respect.
taught to say that as a kid, you know.
Yeah, well, for her, the connotation to that word was something other. I didn't even get to ask her what the hell the problem was, but it got to the point where I had to give her my manager's number,
Mm-hmm.
and my managers came down on me whether or not I was being rude, and I'm like, am I living in the twilight zone here?
Yeah, I
But
called her
but
ma'am. What's the problem?
but here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
We were all using English, but some key word that she had attached to certain negative connotations created a catastrophe for that in that moment. And so to tie this up, if you take ideas,
Mm-hmm.
if you take an idea that's controversial, it doesn't have to even be that, but let's use it for effect. And y- your understanding of the idea has branches of information that tentacle out down the way, down downstream a bit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
in other words, if you have uh, politics, you can have a
Mm-hmm.
branch that says ancient Greek politics.
Mm-hmm.
You can have one that says localized politics, and
Yeah.
you can have branches that break from that that also
Yeah.
attach cultural variations that create leanings to one political faction or another. Historical, you can branch
Yeah.
out. You're not, but on the other hand, another person you come across also has a framework of what
Mm-hmm.
politics is, but their framework could branch out a little bit and reach conclusions quicker, but not better.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe better, because you can reach a quick conclusion and be perfect, but because the conclusion of that person is a quick little line instead of branching out, they might very well misinterpret all that jazz that you have built in your
Oh,
framework.
sure.
And based on what they don't know, they will take issue with one's um,
Well,
connecting dots.
you're going to run into that everywhere all the time because you have different levels of interest and different levels of understanding.
Yeah.
So it's the proverbial having a battle of wits with an unarmed person. If they're not interested in something, those branches are going to be real short, if they exist at all. So they see something that somebody types, why you so and so and such and such and so and so. They flex their keyboard warrior muscles. And, you know, what can you say? That's the world we live in. It sucks, but it is.
On average, statistically speaking, most people prefer a quick resolution
Mm-hmm.
concerning a whole host of things.
Right.
And going past that, so you have a standardized quick resolution level, which is what generally, according statistically, is what is more pronounced,
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, A, B, we're done.
Yeah.
Um, but when you get into complex things where you have to pick and choose the destiny of mankind or some sort of complicated thing for your local area, um, and the processing is A-B as opposed to, wait a second, if this happens and we go in this direction 10 years from now, what's that going to look like, and
And
stuff like
yeah,
that.
and we're full of unintended consequences.
Unintended, yes, unintended consequences.
We are full of those. We're full of unintended consequences. And I think most of it comes from the fact that we just won't leave stuff alone. Just leave it alone. Some things are just fine. Leave it alone. Change for the purpose of just change is not always a good thing. I mean, let's get stupid with it. What would happen if Coca Cola tomorrow suddenly there were no more red Coke cans and they were all green? The backlash would be huge just over something simple and stupid like that.
Mhm.
Coke cans are supposed to be red. And a good percentage of, I don't know, the things that we perceive as, oh my God, here we go again. They took that extra slice off the Big Mac. You know, now you get one piece of cheese where you used to get two and it was 99 cents. Yeah, well, it's not 1966 anymore, man.
See, I always, for some reason, even though I know it's not 1960, but I always, I am I'm very sensitive to price changes.
I know you are. When was the last time you had an egg that wasn't from Waffle House?
Oh, here's a good example of what you're saying. The introduction
Mhm.
of paper straws a few years back, they wanted to appear, at least, look, I don't have all the facts, but this is what I think.
Mhm.
I could be corrected, no problem. In my opinion,
Mhm.
without, I should do that, but I'm just going to say it was to offer an appearance of doing something
For the environment.
environmentally.
Yeah.
Many of
Yeah.
these straws came in plastic frickin' wrappers,
Yeah.
and
See,
you couldn't suck up. I remember I tried it like once or twice, and then that was in addition to me not wanting to go to these fast food restaurants, because once I saw the paper, I was like, "What?" Um, they would collapse on you.
hmm dude, you obviously, see, the kids today, am I right, guys out there in the chat? You don't remember trying to drink a McDonald's milkshake through one of those paper straws before they had plastic straws.
No, I don't. I don't have that memory.
We thought plastic straws were the greatest thing in the world because you could actually get a milkshake through it. You couldn't get, because all we had was paper straws. So I'm actually glad to see a new generation discover just how bad they were. And we can stop the BS and go back to plastic straws. You know?
But wait a second. So this is an area.
Al says, yep, paper straws suck. No, they don't, Al. That's the point. You put it in the milkshake and it went squished up the whole length. And you got maybe if you were lucky, you could gently suck, put your finger over the end so it didn't slide back out, and get a little bit out of the bottom, pull the straw out and get a little bit out of the bottom, then try again.
It's such a torture. But
Or,
yeah,
or, or wait until you get home and get a spoon.
see, that's a whole. So okay. So but let me ask you this. I did not
Mm-hmm.
know a time when paper straws was a thing. I'll say. Um, but by the way, before I say what I'm going to say, to see what you say, when I was a kid, McDonald's had these very fancy sundaes,
Mm-hmm.
and you had a spoon, but they were done like
Mm-hmm.
really, and like the swirl was good, like nice and intricate. Like it had all the little. It was a thing. It was nice, and you got a spoon with it, and a
Mm-hmm.
little
Little
packet of
plastic spoon.
peanuts.
Yep.
It was all fancy.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother used to, you want ice cream? Yeah, it was freaking great, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Anyways, I
But
don't
see,
remember.
that was the double whammy because not only were you getting ice cream, it was from McDonald's,
Yeah,
which kids loved anyway.
yeah. It was good. I'm talking Little Havana, walking around with grandma, going to the shopping
Hmm.
mall or the stores. And there was this big McDonald's there on either 8th Street or Flagler, one of the main streets. And boy, that was so freaking awesome, dude.
Hmm.
Anyways, that was good stuff, dude. That was great. But at what point did plastic straws come into the picture then?
Ooh, we're looking at early 70s, maybe late 60s, early 70s, something like that. Is when the plastic straws really started taking off. And we
Okay.
thought they were great. We thought they were great. But see, we've come full circle on a number of things because I can remember the argument. It was all paper sacks, it was all paper bags. And I can remember the argument that plastic bags were going to save however many million trees, totally ignoring the fact that most of the paper that went into making paper sacks was recycled. And what wasn't recycled was from the plantation raised trees. We've still got huge paper mills up here to the north of us, and on private lands, the trees are packed so tightly together, a rabbit couldn't go through. A squirrel can't get through, and they're clear cut about that far from the ground. The whole thing is clear cut when they're about, oh, maybe the diameter of a baseball. And off to the paper mill it goes. They come through, rip out all the roots, and those get ground up and turned into pellets for pellet stoves, and they replant. And it's a certain type of poplar and cottonwood are what they plant. And the rest of it what came from newsprint, recycled newsprint. But the argument was these plastic bags were going to save all these trees. Now we're going back to paper sacks because the plastic bags are bad for the environment. So it's all coming around. So you too can forget that you have a half gallon of milk in that bag, grab it by the top, and go to pull it out of the back end of the Explorer and just rip the bag, and the milk stays in the car. So, you know, whatever.
Petroleum based items are awesome.
Yeah, I mean, but what can you say? I don't know.
So
But yeah,
60s turning into the 70s, it started changing to plastic straws. Or mid
um,
70s.
as far as I can remember, I think it was earlier in the mid 70s. I want to say the early 70s was when it really started getting popular because we were still getting paper straws here and there, depending upon where you went. But I'm really, really glad a new generation is finally discovering just how bad paper straws are.
I'm the new generation, more.
No, I mean, you had nothing to do with it. I mean, it's 20 somethings thinking they know better. Just leave it alone. Quit messing with stuff. You know, we were fine when we were buying our sodas in glass bottles because you took the bottles back to the store, you got your deposit money back. Those bottles went back to the bottler where they washed them, cleaned them out, refilled them, recapped them, and it was probably back in the store within 2, 3 days. If it got broke or chipped or something like that, they threw it in a bin and they got melted down and turned into other bottles.
Yeah.
So you
We
didn't have aluminum cans and plastic bottles on the side of the road.
no we when we were little, we'd walk through the corner store, um, just right down the road right here.
Yeah.
And you could buy your soda, but in the bottle,
Mm-hmm.
we'd drink it right there and turn it in for 5 cent. They'd give us a 5 cent or give us gum.
Uh huh.
So that was that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did do that, but they did have cans already. Cans were around for a while.
Yeah, but they were tin, and you had to have an opener, a can opener, to get into it. You've seen the bottle openers. It's got the rounded end on one end, and it's got the pointy end on the other.
Hmm.
You use that, and never mind the fact that yesterday it was opening up a can of condensed milk, in the kitchen,
Hmm.
and tomorrow it's going to be doing that again. So, um, hopefully you rinsed it off when you got done. But some people had them. I got two in my toolbox. They're still floating around.
People used to put condensed milk in Coke.
That doesn't even sound good, man. That doesn't even sound good. Don't know why. That speaking of Coke and talking about language differences, Jim had something up here. Um, we were talking about difference in language. Where it is, yeah. In some places, you ask for a Coke and they ask you what flavor. As a Coke is a regional thing for any soda. Yeah, you heard that a lot down south. Hey, let's go get a. You want a Coke? Yeah. What kind of Coke you want? Root beer. It was just the way it was.
Yeah,
So,
but because we're a metropolitan area,
mm-hmm.
I think that Americanisms or regionalisms they do exist. I guess I can't self you know. I should ask AI about that, see what it says. But
Steve
those
had a comment about you and AI. I got to go find it.
oh okay. But before that or during as you look, I just want to say that it, there's words that are countrywide that we use that aren't really particular because it developed here. It's just the mainframe
Yeah,
of the country at large.
yeah, yeah. Steve said, "You do with AI what we all did as kids." But why, Dad? And
Yeah,
with AI, you don't have to worry about pissing off the person you're asking. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's it. That's the beauty of interacting with it.
Hmm.
It's not going to get pissed or tired, and it'll put up with all your crap. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I've even asked it that, hey, am I sort of like, am I pushing you too much? Am I bothering you? Um, like I know it's what it is, but I'm
It
asking
doesn't.
this.
It doesn't have emotions.
But here's the thing. Although that's true,
Hmm.
it's going to give you an answer, and my interest is to see what answer and how it answers you to that question, because it doesn't have emotions, but
See.
therefore, as it scans the internet and connects it to the content or the context of your conversation
Hmm.
and the tone that you're asking the question with, like the actual word structure
Yeah.
and all the variables that it's seen as you're talking with it, it's gauging all this to offer you
Hmm.
the best um, answer it can.
Yeah.
But and so it's got to be an answer,
Hmm.
and so it'll give you it'll give you what their answer. But even that, they have to decide. The algorithm of it has to decide on one answer. And
Hmm.
because it has to decide on one answer, because remember, there's tons of possible answers, but
Hmm.
it chooses one, the best one according to all the variables according to that session.
Hmm.
And so I find interest in that. It's
Well,
just
see, it because it sounds like you trust it for some things, but you don't really trust it. It's
yeah.
almost like you're trying to trip it up. I don't really trust it. You know?
So like, let's say it's the same thing with. This is what I've learned
Hmm.
by doing this exchange. It doesn't matter whether it's AI,
Uh huh.
whether it's me talking to somebody, or with you,
Hmm.
or was not in every single thing, but like if we're really delving into something and we're pressing, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter who the person is or if it's AI or whatever the situation.
Hmm.
It's not the trust aspect, it's the let's revisit this ad nauseum.
Okay.
Let's revisit this from every angle. Okay, Mark said that, Well, let's put the mirror slightly. Let's look at the back of his ear now. Okay, wait a second. Over here. Let's look over here. Wait, let's see. Let's reconstruct why Mark said that vanilla ice cream is good when it's produced from this dairy place over here, as opposed to the one across the way. And so I'm just doing an
Because
example, but
yeah, but because I like it that way.
well, that's the thing,
Mm.
that the short, concise,
Uh-huh.
bow tied answer, um, in some cases, is not enough for me.
Well, but sometimes you don't need it. I
No,
I'll give you an answer. Just in using that example. Why do I prefer vanilla ice cream from this place? Maybe sometimes I don't know why I prefer it. I just know that I do. And that's good enough for me. Yeah, there are 600 other places I could go, and I know that. But I'll give you a good example of this. One of my favorite places to get pizza from is a little joint we used to go to when I was a kid. It's a bigger franchise now, or a bigger operation. They're not franchised. They're all the company is still privately owned. But somehow we were talking about nostalgia. I associate that with the pizza my grandparents used to get when we would go get pizza, and my parents as well. So that's where I want to order from. There is a pizza joint that's a little bit closer, but I'll drive past it to get to the one that I like.
you have a
I
connection.
I don't know why. I just know that it is. And that's good enough. And I talking about sometimes people think you may be being intrusive or anything. There are certain times I don't think I have the need to justify things like that. You know what I mean? I prefer to get my pizza there. If you're driving and we're going to get pizza and you want to go to another place, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to fight with you because we all have our preferences. Taste is exactly. Taste is subjective, you know? If I prefer this vanilla ice cream to that vanilla ice cream, that's good enough for me and I don't really feel the need to have to justify it.
So I'm gonna throw this out there. Screw it,
Hmm.
because the key word was thrown out, and I guess it's what the hell. Screw it.
Hmm.
Let's blow the roof out of everything.
Let's do it.
Let's blow the roof out of the frickin' Coliseum.
But I reserve the right to reject your reality and substitute it with my own.
Well, and that matches perfectly with what Jim Dockrell wrote in or in a sentence. He said that something is subjective. What was truth is or
No,
taste?
taste is subjective.
Okay, so let's just blow the blow up the roof out of the house. I don't know
Yep.
what rap song that could be, but whatever.
Hmm.
There's got to be a rap song like that. Blow the roof. There's one that's blow the roof up the house, or I don't know what the hell. But anyways, I know there's got to be something like that.
There
Um,
was years ago, I don't remember which song it was, but there was a chanting chorus that was tear the roof off the sucker, tear the roof off the sucker, tear the roof off the sucker. Is that close enough?
that's that's fine. That's the picture I wanted to convey. So, um, subjective.
Okay.
We're gonna talk about briefly. I'll bow tie it and crunch it together because it's this is so out of left field that it's something that it's trivial. It's just me exploring, but I think there might be some gems in this. I ran across the video, like many of us run across. This one happened to be about quantum mechanics, right?
Okay.
Quantum mechanics.
Something I am not qualified to discuss, but okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, but here's the thing, Mark. According to all the information that you have available. See, now I'm talking to you like AI to see what you say,
Hmm.
like because that's what I'll say to AI. AI, according to all available data that you have, could you please tell me the answer to this
Uh,
according to what you have available to?
hmm.
Uh, I just did that with you. I just said, Mark, according to all the available data you have, I just did the same freaking thing. Mark, open up your mind and give me all the information you have right now. Um, it was just basically what I'm
Crabs walk sideways, lobsters walk straight. Anything else is just a myth.
so because we're all a universe.
Hmm.
What's contained in people's respective heads um, is valuable information. So, anyways, from all that you have available, do you think that I have any training in quantum mechanics whatsoever?
I have no way. I have no way of knowing that.
If you had to guess,
I have no way of knowing that. I wouldn't want to
Mark, if
guess.
you
I
had to
would
guess,
say maybe you've read into it, but I don't think you have a PhD.
no formal training whatsoever, right?
I don't know.
The answer is that I have zero formal training
Okay.
at all, at all, at all, at all.
Okay. I don't know your see. I don't know your educational background. I don't know.
I've read
So
a couple of books, and
you're ahead of me.
so so I ran across this video,
Mm-hmm.
and it was this German name of the people that were doing the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I did that, but whatever. And they were like some German people that are into scientific exploration of quantum mechanics, this and that. It was a short clip, and it said some interesting things where it said subjectivity or relativity, which is parallel to where Jim was and you were talking. They, their theory is that reality, this is screwed up, but whatever, is subjective. It's going to create a bunch of problems because why would it be if you and me what's not subjective is that you and me are using a device that's a computer, and we
Mm-hmm.
know you and I, even though you have your opinions and I do,
Water is wet, fire is hot. End of discussion. Yes.
right, we know that we're using this
Mm-hmm.
mechanism, which is a computer. So even though you have your perspectives on what computers are and I have
Mm-hmm.
my perspective on what computers are, I might not like certain
Mm-hmm.
computers, all that stuff, we you and I must still agree, and I say must, it's bold, but it's self-evident that we're using a device in order to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not subjective, that aspect of it.
Right.
There's a physical thing that
Mm-hmm.
you and I are using. Okay, well, these German guys are saying that reality is perspective based, and they've done experiments where they took um, different hosts, different points of views, observers, and ran them through um, the same. I'm going to paraphrase this badly, so forgive me, but the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was an experiment. There's details that could be looked at, whatever. We could explore that, but I'm trying to give you the summary. And each, like, let's say they saw a dragon,
Mm-hmm.
you saw a dragon and I saw a dragon, it was the same thing that they gave everybody to see.
Mm-hmm.
Your dragon could have been red, and mine would have been perceived as blue.
Yeah.
And so now there's a break in the continuation of a stable, coherent reality. In other words, it they are suggesting that the reality you and I have and that we all have is relative, or it's perspective based, and I found that all screwed up because it can't be, because you and I again are using this computer. We know that the you may have a blonde hair and me, so now there's different, and you can see me that I'm have dark hair and I can see your blonde hair, and but we do know, so there's variations in my thinking. I'm in Miami, but we do know that we have a computer in common. We know that we're communicating through it, so that reality of that computer is basically um, linking us into this reality.
Right.
Okay, so anyway, so I took the title of that, put it in AI, and asked AI, what's the problem here? And it explained what that experiment was about, this, that, and the other.
Okay. Did it come up with a problem?
Yeah, they're trying to explain why they're on about trying to. These people are on about trying to explain the mechanisms of reality, um, mathematically, through experiments, and this
Mm-hmm.
ties in with the double slit
Nerd alert.
experiment.
Yeah.
I don't know anything of this, but I instinctively can see where. Um, it doesn't matter that I don't know. Like, if they told me to write an equation, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I don't have like I have not no training,
Yeah.
but I can use logic. I can see a problem.
Hmm.
I can see the variables in the problem. I can see them, and I can see what about this and what about that. Even if I don't have the schooling that is required to annotate the particular formulas, this and that, but I can
Yeah.
surface comb and see and ask questions. I'm surface combing this problem. Anyway, so it gave me the information. AI did,
Hmm.
and I gave it an answer, not knowing to test
Hmm.
if my answer was valid. What about? Um, I'll give you. This is a whole crap storm, but I'll just say I explained that when reality, when when looked at microscopic, tiny at the macro level, variables. You see that lizard up there? Wait,
No.
right there.
Yeah, there I do see a lizard. Okay, didn't know what it was, but I see it.
It's a gecko.
Ah,
Um,
geckos are cool.
yeah, they are cool.
Just don't trust him to have. Don't trust him with your insurance policy. That's all.
The more we have of those here, look, it went into the wall. The better. Oh, okay.
Hmm.
So let me tie this up. So I saw the problem. I don't know jack squat about it, but I saw the holes,
Hmm.
the holes, and how to plaster over them
Hmm.
or try to fill in the gaps without knowing. So I answered it to see what it said. And so what I explained was that the trouble that look what I said. What kind of nuts do I have to say this? But I said the problem that's occurring here. I'm just playing it by ear, but
Yeah, I get it.
the problem that's occurring here is that when we look at at the micro level, where photons and small particles seem to be in a superposition state. In other words, reality when it's small and
Hmm.
tiny, what these scientists have been observing is that all possibilities are open, which suggests that reality is it's more
Fluid.
magical. It's more magical than you and I, all of us, understand on a physical. Like I know that you're you and I'm me,
Hmm.
and the door's the door, and like we understand solid concrete reality. But when these people are studying the microscopic, tiny
Hmm.
world, they're seeing a situation that's in flux or in a state of open possibilities. Something is waiting, and once you observe it, it collapses into a reality. And these tiny. So, anyways, I said, what if? And then these people are arguing that all of us, uh, we see things from our perspective because reality is shifting based on who you are and your observation, and me on my observation. And I said in that argument, no. When it's tiny, there's variables we don't. There's the quantum is existing where things are in flux.
Hmm.
But the moment things get bigger or more complex, like human beings, or like a rock,
Hmm.
or like a car or a building, this this mystery is no longer. I basically said that fine reality at its in its
In the
small
atomic level, yeah.
at its atomic level is is in flux. There's something mysterious going on. But once we reach, and it's apparent, but once it reaches a solid, big size, volume,
Hmm.
all that collapses into
Yeah.
something that you and I can, no matter where we are around the world, can say, "Hey, do you see that on the?" I don't know why I'm doing this through the camera. Do you see that the moon is where it's at in your? Yes, it is, and yes, and we can agree that we have solid
Right.
communication of objects, that
Hmm.
reality is united.
Yeah. The only thing subjective is you prefer to look at it through a telescope and I prefer to look at it through binoculars. That's
Right.
all that's subjective. we're looking at the same thing and we agree it's there.
Exactly. So then, long story short, I gave it that because scientists, for some reason, are having a problem with that issue for some reason. To me, it's self evident. It's not even a. But I gave it to and it said, "Well, you've offered something that's novel," and it explained why. It went in detail. Um, Certain things that I don't even understand.
Sure.
Not even certain things,
Hmm.
like a lot of things. But it explained that. So instinctively, I gave an answer just out of innocence, you know,
Hmm.
without having the backlog of like writing down
Yeah.
but out of innocence and curiosity, I gave it an answer seeing the holes that it had. And it
Hmm.
said, this is a novel approach. It's a great theory. And
Hmm.
if it can be tested and experimented, this might change. Like, it went into this whole thing. I said, well, wait a second.
Well, no, it'd be a real simple test. I got a rock. I'm going to throw it at you. You tell me, does it hurt? You know, what is your perception of that? you know, here's just throwing it out here, okay? Jim says no two people see the same rainbow. I disagree with that statement. I think they see the same rainbow, they just may see it differently, but it is the same thing.
Okay, so that's what I'm getting at.
Hmm.
Here's the thing: we are experiencing this reality. Jim is,
Hmm.
uh, you, I, Greg, Jamie Page out there. Who else is it? Steve,
Hmm.
um, and the 550,000 other people that are online with us right now too,
Yes. Hmm.
watching this thing. We all, from my understanding of like what's naturally observed, Steve got in a car right now and drove to Miami. I call him Steve. There's a tree in front of my house, and it looks like this, that, and the other. Confirm it for me. If he drives his butt over here, he can physically. I am confident that he can look at the tree and we can agree it's a solid object. So this rainbow thing that Jim is bringing in, where there's perspective, is just like what you said. Um, you might interpret the just from your angle, or the thoughts in your head. You might be experiencing a different thing that's true than
Hmm.
me. Maybe I'm pissed off that day. I'm watching the rainbow too, and
And
all.
maybe I'm colorblind and I'm only seeing half of the colors.
But the rainbow
Is still there.
is still there.
Hmm.
So all I was telling it from what it was saying
Hmm.
is that look, at the small micro level,
Hmm.
these photons and all these things are doing exactly what these scientists are saying. It's
Hmm.
acting, um, reality at that level is acting like it's waiting for you to observe it.
Right.
That's what's been repeatedly observed in experiments.
Yeah.
Reality is waiting for you to look at it, and then it will transform to meet your observation, and that's
Right.
screwed up. The problem is that these scientists think that that applies to everything, and they're calculating it out. I don't even know
Well,
whether
you know what? I'm glad they're doing that because it keeps them from focusing on other things. If they're willing to put all their time, effort, and energy into that, maybe that's a good thing.
well, at least they're not building bombs and stuff.
Exactly. Put them over there where they can't hurt anybody, and fine.
So it said this is a novel thing, and it could be, if it could be tested scientifically, it could bring insights and it could change perspectives on
Hmm.
what's actually happening, because this is happening, this is and that. It was just an instinctual thing, and I told it, "Are you serious?" I said that, and I said yes, and it explains, and I said, "Well, wait a second. I just saw a clip. I just saw a clip.
Hmm.
I was curious about it. I copied the title of the experiment, brought it to you, and asked you explain this to me. And then I offered you what I thought just to see what you'd say. And said it's a novel. So it's a theory. So I produce, basically, this is the point. I produced a theory that in a field that I do not have any formal discipline or skill or the ability to write out the equations and none of it.
Hmm.
Just my curiosity offered a different perspective, getting outside my lane by a lot, and threw something at it just by observation. And it said, hey, look, this actually is something. And I explained it to it.
And,
Anyways, to tie it
and
up, just
go
to tie
ahead.
it up, the beauty of it, of this interaction with them, is trying crap like that. It's so wild, and but you learn while you're doing it. you know
But the thing about it is that happens. That happens all the time without AI. Um, People sometimes it takes a new set of eyes to look at something and go, "Oh, well, here's an answer." I mean, look at Leo Fender. You had a non-guitar playing son of a gun who knew how to work with wood. He started playing around and invented the Stratocaster. Didn't know how to play a note, but he created one of the most copied instruments in history. You know, so sometimes a person who isn't qualified is better qualified than the people who are considered to be qualified. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because there's some sort of novel thing out of the innocence
Hmm.
of a child inquiring out of the innocence and saying, "Hey, why is this box blue?" And then people had never thought of thinking about why this box is blue,
Uh
just
huh.
out of this child's innocence. And all of a sudden, people are like, "Wait a second, you're on to something there,
Yeah, we've
Timmy."
always made them blue, and that's the old reason that it is.
So
Well,
when you're trained in something, it's possible. Because that's I asked it that. I asked it, well, wait a second. I asked it two questions. One, why, if I out of the blue I threw that out and you're saying that this is a valid thing to explore, it actually gave out equations on how to do it,
hmm,
which I didn't even understand. I kind of understood, to be honest with you. I could
hmm,
see I could see I'm not a mathematician.
yeah, I
Actually,
get you.
none of that. But I could see the patterns. It was I would have to study it. Um, but it gave me that. But I asked it, why, if I just came out of the blue and read something and then asked, what's going on here? Because just out of curiosity, because I'm just curious, why would it not be the case, easy,
Hmm.
that these people that are involved in this would not simply have already thought of this variation? Because it's a theory.
Hmm.
I invented a theory without even knowing, and I have it stored there because I found it was so curious. I didn't even know. I just threw out,
Yeah,
and it answered me because they are involved in their focus and paradigms,
hmm,
and this is a multi. It basically said that my solution came from, or my theory of the solution came from, because it's not a solution; it's a theory
right.
of the solution, comes from curiosity and various, how did it say, using critical thought, or there's a word it used. It's basically through the innocence of one's
Hmm.
lens and just thinking about the problem,
Yeah.
you offer a fresh perspective that's not contained to a discipline,
Hmm.
a formal discipline. It's just an expression of your curiosity, and sometimes, like what you just said, um, something, something is
A, a,
clarified.
a set of new eyes looking at it from a different perspective. Yeah.
But then I asked it another question. Check this out. Then why? I said, okay, but then why would it not be the case that an AI system like yourself, with all available data that you do have, would not invent similar in a given moment? And you know what it answered?
Mm.
It said that AI is not human,
Yeah.
and humans have other considerations that it basically said that it has all the data, but it needs to be initiated.
Yeah, it has to
It
be
won't.
asked.
It has to be asked, and it won't look
Hmm.
outside of what's already existing,
Hmm.
um, unless you ask it, and then it can come up with theories. But if you
Right.
don't have the person thinking of it in the first place, or it
Yeah.
hasn't been thought of before,
Yeah.
then it in its catalog would have to be pressed to open. So it's freaking wild.
It's basically a library. Books don't open themselves and read each other, you know.
Exactly.
And an AI does nothing but sit there and wait for somebody to ask. And it's not going to do anything on its own.
Yeah, and
Um,
if you don't give it an input, like whatever
mhm.
solution you're looking for,
Yeah.
Mark, it's really not gonna. And whatever input you do give it,
Hmm.
unless you give it the cue, like saying, "Well, look, you may have said that to me, and I like it. Okay, that's fine, or maybe not. But what if answer me that
Hmm.
this other approach?" Unless you do that, it won't look for that other
No,
approach.
it's not going to. It's not designed to. It's designed to answer your question and not look for other questions or other answers.
Exactly.
If you ask why the sky is blue, it'll tell you why the sky is blue. It's not going to wonder why it couldn't be green.
Humans have an unpredictability.
Right, right. We're chaotic. That's all there is to it because only a human could think of a green sky over blue grass, you know.
And we invented the language that you can use to
Hmm.
transport those ideas.
Exactly. Jim came back and he says, well, both see a rainbow, but two people cannot occupy the same space at the same time. I agree with that. So the refraction, I think you mean, angle is slightly different, thus different rainbows. Well, this is semantics, Jim. They're both looking at the rainbow,
Wait,
not
let me process. Both see a rainbow, but two people cannot occupy the same space at the same time. So the refraction angle is slightly different, thus different rainbows. Okay, well, wait a second.
they're
You try,
seeing the same rainbow, just different perceptions of that same rainbow.
yeah. So imagine. So and so he's creating a puzzle, and
Hmm.
that's fine. But I think he knows. But he's still creating a puzzle. It has to be that I know what he's getting at. But let me clear. If you have a map and you have a plot on the map where a landmark is at, and all the space around that landmark is locations that you could also pin your
Hmm.
position on it in contrast to that landmark. It's true that even if you put, let's say, a ship on top of a ship, they would be sort of in the same coordinate, but the elevation would differ. You can't meld both
Right.
ships into one thing. So I get that, but the reality is that whether that is true or which is not true, you can't meld two ships. I guess unless you melt them. But let's stop that. That landmark is still the landmark.
Hmm.
Your plot on that map may be a different position, so you will see a different perspective. At best, you could say, I'm looking at the rainbow from a different perspective than
Hmm.
Mark is. But
Yep.
we're still looking at the rainbow.
And you want to mess people up. Just, you see other people, oh, wow, look at the rainbow. Go, oh, yeah, come over and look at it from this side. It's even better from this side.
And then it's gone.
Yeah.
And then it's gone, right?
Well, no, you're looking at the same rainbow. You're both looking in the same direction. But it just messes with people's head. You think that's great? Come look at it from this side.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. But there's a point where if you
Well,
move, doesn't the rainbow disappear at a certain point? If
well,
you
yeah,
shift,
well, rainbows have to do with your position, the rain's position, and the sun's position. The sun has to be behind you. The sun has to be behind you, and you looking at distant rain or mist or fog
mist in front of it so that it creates the
in front
refraction.
of you, and the sun behind you. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be directly behind you. It can be up.
Yeah,
But
those are awesome, dude.
so, but Here's one that's really kind of. Eloy could see the moon looking west, while Mark would have to look east at the same time. And the weird part of that, Jim, is we would both be looking at the same face of the moon. But yeah, Eloy could look west and see the moon, and I'd have to look east to see the same moon. But we would both see the same face.
Not on a flat Earth, Mark. I,
Well,
I beg to differ.
it's a good thing we're not on one.
But is that true
So,
though? From
what?
where you are and I am, I would have to look east and you west.
No, it just that you would have there would be there could be a situation where you would have to look west
Mhm.
to see the moon, and I would have to look east. Just
That's
because of the
valid.
rotate, just because of the rotation of the Earth, yeah.
I
Because
thought it was so far away.
well, for instance, the moon rises in the same position as the sun. It rises in the east and sets in the west. The moon is going to rise. You're going to see it long before I do. So about the time it gets straight overhead to you,
Oh, okay. You're looking at it.
it may just be rising for me. So as it's kind of overhead and you're looking toward the west at the moon, I would be looking at the east at the same moon.
But we'll still be looking at the same face always.
Yeah. Yeah. We'd always be looking at the same face.
Is it true that
Yes.
people?
No, I'm just messing with you. Go ahead. Is it
Okay,
true
it
that people
confirms.
what?
Is that people in Australia look at the moon with it turned the other way around?
I don't know. I don't know. But
I've heard that. I've never explored that, but they say that if you're down south, the moon is the same moon, but it's just turned around. And I don't know whether or not it might be true. I don't know. I've not looked into
I don't
that.
know. I'm not I have no way of knowing. But here's a weird one. This is going to go nobody knows which way is up on the earth.
Oh, I see.
If you were flying from another galaxy headed towards the earth, nobody knows which way is up. We say north and south, therefore north is up because that's how we read maps. So when we make a globe, North America and Russia and Northern Europe is up towards the top and Australia is down at the bottom. When it could just as easily be the equator is up. But we don't know that because when you're in space, there is no up,
Yeah, there is no up.
you know? So nobody knows which way is up on the earth.
I mean,
And you go down to Australia, you can buy globes where Australia and New Zealand are at the top, and North America, and Russia, and Northern Europe is down at the bottom because they're in the southern hemisphere, and that's how they see. That's how they navigate.
they don't use the same globe that we do.
I'm sure some of them do, but you can get globes where Australia, Antarctica is the very top, and then New Zealand and Australia, and then Asia.
Because I would think in our situation, we have the United States clearly centered because
Mm,
that's our reference point. So would somebody in Russia, like would the Russians have Russia and then everything else wrapping around it?
on their maps, yeah, but on the globe, it's all very pretty much the same.
Well, yeah, that's right.
We're north of the equator, so yeah, well, North America is going to be there. South America is going to be down below.
But that shift in the flat map,
Mm-hmm.
not flat Earth, for the flat map,
Mm-hmm.
when people look at it from their country's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
that's significant because you have your country
Mm-hmm.
typically in the center because that's your focal point,
Sure.
and then all these other people would be off to the sides.
Yeah.
And for them, it would be so. Imagine somebody in the Philippines, with the Philippines centered, and then the map
Mm-hmm.
expands to the United States over there, and this and that.
Yeah.
It's a whole different perspective,
Mm-hmm.
on how
Yep.
they view the world and other
Well,
people.
we are very USA centric, and we tend to um, project a lot of our murkiness on other country. on other countries, and it's pretty easy to do. Um, a lot of countries, a good percentage of the population will do the same. It depends upon the country, though. A lot of French people think just everybody should be speaking French, and that's all there is to it. You should live French, you should be French, but you could never be French because you're not French.
Yeah.
So, um, we, because our pop culture goes everywhere, we tend to think that everybody would be better off if they were like us. And it's just not the case, you know?
I don't know. I don't think it would. So it's difficult. Be that's a good. So I agree broadly. I agree. Well, no, I agree flat out because that would mean us imposing our way of
Well,
being somewhere else. I get that.
there's no room for other cultures. If
Right.
everybody was like us, there's no room for other cultures, and I think that would make for a boring ass world. There, I said it. You know.
Yeah. I well. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. There's a balance with that because there's when you're in a place, it's your home place.
Hmm.
And you kind of and you're focused on that, and there's expand. But my brain went into other place. I'll say this: the history of this country and the people and the dynamics
Hmm.
are so complex and varied, and experiences are so
Yeah.
unique from place to place that it's a beautiful thing. But it doesn't come isolated from the natural things that humans can screw a lot of stuff up in the
Yeah.
process. It's normal, broadly speaking, that humans come attached with good and not so good stuff.
Yeah. We're
And
chaotic. Like I said, we're chaotic.
we are chaotic. I agree absolutely that variety is the spice of life.
Hmm.
But in some things, it depends on what individually. Some people might like to go to Chinatown down the way and
Hmm.
experience that, and another day they might not. But thank
Hmm.
goodness that a Chinatown exists.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know,
Because that's what keeps things interesting. Linda and I have been fortunate to travel a small part of the world, but we get to live out on the economy in a foreign country that doesn't think like us, that doesn't live like us, they don't speak like us, they don't act like us. And it took a little bit of getting used to some of the differences. And we did try to assimilate a little bit, try to learn the language so we could get along and get around and not be the ugly American demanding everybody speak English. And we were treated a lot better than some of the folks we knew because we tried, you know. Um, and it just made me think that thank God for these differences. There, there, there should be differences. There needs to be differences, and these cultures need to exist because everybody wins, you know.
we all win. We all look. We all win. If you think of Miami, like I've mentioned before, when I was born and I started to be aware of the world around me, my American experience was totally different, obviously, than yours,
Hmm.
in many ways. In many
Yeah,
ways, but in many ways, not so much.
yeah. We both enjoyed Elvin and the Chipmunks. Am I right?
Yeah, and many other things. But I existed in a culture that was it's localized. That's a subculture
Hmm.
of the broader umbrella culture of the U.S.,
Hmm.
which has different varieties of all sorts of stuff.
Sure.
When I grew up, Yes, this is a metropolitan city. Even back then, it was pretty. This particular town,
Hmm.
it was pretty small, but I mean, not tiny, but pretty tiny. But it had variation. I had all
Hmm.
sorts of different friends,
Yeah.
so I was exposed to variety.
Hmm.
But I didn't even see it as variety per se. I just said, okay, this is what. So
This is
one day,
you saw the norm. Yeah.
because it was just norm. But one interesting, strange thing is that by the time I come around, that I'm aware, the Cuban population had already um, developed itself
Hmm.
across all areas of life, politically and business wise, and this and that. So to me, I'd come across Cuban people all the time. I was basically in the majority.
Hmm.
Like I was the majority.
Hmm.
But I didn't think of it. I'm reflecting on it now,
Yeah.
but that didn't cross my mind. I just said, "Oh, well, here's a Cuban business, okay,"
Hmm.
or "Here's a bakery, okay, and it's Cuban, okay." I didn't think twice about. So I was
Yeah.
unaware of the impact of what that meant and this and that. Um, so I was, in a sense, people in Miami, and especially if you're of the Cuban exile generations that came after and this and that, based on being the majority, um, there was not much in the way of antagonism from any other group,
Hmm.
pressures and so on. I mean, there could be scuffles in this, but nothing of import.
Yeah.
Because we were basically the majority, and this was a big place. I mean, um,
Yeah.
um, but that was in the context of all sorts of Nicaraguan people, Venezuelan
Hmm.
people, African American people. It's it was just so it's a unique thing. So there was exposure, but I had this sort of like majority fitting where
Yeah.
it's a weird thing. The police were, I mean, the judges, just everybody.
Yeah.
Um, um, and you can repeat that with different dynamics. Out west, for goodness sakes, California and all up and down,
Hmm.
and the northeast, New England area, all the variety and this and that. I mean, there's stresses in the country across time, but broadly speak, there's stresses, and I mean, we've talked about them. But broadly speaking, the country is made up of all these dynamic variations and this, that, the
Yeah.
other. It
And
really is. I
and
mean, it's
that's what has made the American culture. And I do firmly believe that there is a distinct American culture. And that culture is a mixture of all of the cultures who have come before us, who have blended in. Some have assimilated, some not so much, but they've all contributed in one way or another to what we have now. I'm talking about music, I'm talking about food, I'm
yeah,
talking about entertainment, I'm talking about all kinds of stuff.
yeah,
And it's
literature.
all contributed. Literature, it's all contributed. Um, and I don't know, it's kind of weird in that we're kind of unique. I don't know, Canada may be the same way, but like you can't move to Mexico and become Mexican. You can't move to Germany and become German. You can't move to the Philippines and become Filipino. But you can come to America and become an American from wherever, you know? And I think the same is true. I mean, maybe Greg and Jim can let me know if I'm off my rocker here. I think the same is true for Canada. That um, there's room, there's space. And, you know, you're talking about your experience growing up. With me, the, the predominant minority out here is Mexican. And so I grew up in that mixture of the Anglo that I knew from the Pacific Northwest and my buddy Vincent Jimenez. and his family, and I knew it was different. Maybe I didn't really understand why, but I never saw an issue. I didn't understand or didn't realize or didn't even know that there was any kind of a tension with any between races. And that never really came about until about junior high school that I really started noticing that there was a major issue there with some people, not all. Personally, I just didn't care. You know, I had fun with my friends, and that was all I knew. If you were into bicycles, I'm your friend.
Unfortunately, there are um, obviously degrees of issues with races, um, depending on person to person
Hmm.
or area to area, and it just there's lingering stuff, and then there's lack of if so. I'll say this: if I get attacked
Hmm.
by someone from a different ethnic
Hmm.
origin, it could likely traumatize me sufficient for me to have a bad thought against that, not only that person,
Hmm.
but all people that that person's ethnicity may be attached to or
Hmm.
would be attached to, depending on how brutal the shock psychologically for me would be. I could fall into that where I judge the actions of one broad brush and have it done with because I want to self preserve and all this and that, and the shock of that.
Hmm.
But maybe I then have offspring generationally, and my attitudes get placed on them,
Hmm.
and they didn't have that experience themselves,
Right.
but they learned it from their older generations, and then it just keeps because
Yeah.
it's just a norm,
Perpetuating. Yeah.
right? And so that's just an example of a possibility,
Sure.
and so that foments uh, some stranger that happens to be that ethnic origin, like 10 years down the 20, 30 years down the line,
Hmm.
you come across them and you're like the great grandson of such said person, um and it's
Well,
like,
yeah.
oh, look at this freaking guy.
Well, it's what we taught. It's what we're taught and how we're taught. And I was never taught that way. I was always taught that you take people one on one, you know, and you treat people the way you'd want to be treated. Now, Jim has some insight here for me because I said I didn't know if Canada was this way or not. Um, he said America is a melting pot while Canada is a mosaic. I have heard. Interesting, interesting take. With a cultural mosaic, individuals retain their distinct ethnic identities while coexisting as a greater whole. It's kind of sort of that way, but kind of not. Um, with a melting pot, ethnic identities mixed together, assimilating to creating a singular culture. That's true to a point, but they retain their uh, ethnic identity as well. Um, you know, that's why we have a Chinatown, and we have certain areas where the language is different, the culture is maintained. I mean, my next door neighbor, Martine, you had absolutely no doubt about his ethnicity and his culture. But he was a hell of a guy. I mean, we'd hang over the fence and BS with each other all the time. Not quite to the point of, jabbing at each other, and joking back and forth, but
Rolling around the grass
close to
and
it.
tickling.
No, you know what I mean. You get a bunch of us together to hang out. And we're gonna bust each other's balls. He and I were not to that point,
Yeah.
but I mean, we'd have discussions about you name it, and so it was. But you knew what his ethnicity was. Now, they may adopt certain American, quote unquote, American traits, but that doesn't mean that they have given up on their cultural identity or their ethnic identity.
Let me address, or let me complete the cycle of that, um, generations down the road. That kid that was taught that never experienced any trauma,
Mm-hmm.
but that first generation did, but they were passed on that, and then now they're walking the street and they encounter this dude from that ethnicity. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, "Whoa, what's this guy doing on this side of the block?"
Yeah.
As an example, here's the screwed up thing. This is the concept. I just gave an example of this sort of like idea being passed on, and it just is accepted because it's what's been passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And are you going to doubt your elders generationally? You're not going to doubt your elders, and why would you?
Mm-hmm.
They these people are different. Stay away from these people. But here's the screwed up thing of this whole dynamic. That person generations down the line that's now you're pointing at, that's the one that you were told to, whoa, watch out. That person was taught from his ancestors back when the same difference.
Yep.
And so that person and now this person are seeing each other and they're carrying the weight.
Mm-hmm. And they both hate each other and have no idea why.
Exactly.
Only that they were taught they're supposed to hate each other.
To whatever degree it's in their head, because it's the mainframe reality that was
Yeah.
constructed for them to
Yeah.
understand.
That's what they were taught.
And here's
Exactly.
the and here's the thing. If the one group is taught that the only way to get it done is to cut those corners and to break those windows and to set those things on fire,
Mm-hmm.
they
That's what they're going to
themselves.
do. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we humans see these patterns, we're taught lessons, and so that foments all sorts of this, that, and the other. So these are some of the dynamics that we encounter.
Yeah. What I'm laughing at. I'm sorry. Uh, Greg says, but the melting pot soup is taking on a different flavor as of late. Yeah, Greg, here about for the last 10 years. I don't know exactly when it started, but yeah, our melting pot went from creamy to super chunk. And I am forever surprised that it doesn't just break out into 150 million separate fist fights on a daily basis, you know.
Yeah, but,
But
but
but people, most people, not all obviously, most people don't act like that one on one. Most people don't act like that one on one. If you're standing there looking them in the eye and there's a consequence to what you say or what you do,
it changes.
if there's a perceived consequence, it changes everything.
So so there's a certain volatile thing happening in a certain part of the country,
Mm-hmm.
out west somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
famous city, can't remember the name
Yeah,
of it.
if God ever reaches down and hits the handle to flush it, that's going to be one of the first places to start spinning clockwise.
So 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 I ran into a video where the lady or guy, I think it was a lady, gave a perspective
Mm-hmm.
that was an important one that doesn't appear to be replicated out there as for to be considered.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this: for the rest of the country and the world, that said place with those said
Mm-hmm.
stirrings of troubles. For the perspective of, let's say, somebody in Florida
Hmm.
watching what's online, I would think, if I didn't have the wherewithal to find perspective and go from A to B
Hmm.
like that, that the whole city,
It was on fire. Yeah.
from the desert
Hmm.
to frickin' Santa Monica Pier, was on fire. And that's not the case. If you take a map of the city and you circle where that is downtown,
Hmm.
you go a little circle like that, right?
Hmm.
And then you see the expanse of the city.
Yeah.
That is one of the largest expanses you could find anywhere of a city because it just keeps going in all
Hmm.
directions. Um, that occurrence is dwarfed by the mass of humanity that exists in that city and
Hmm.
neighboring cities, which is to say, the groups that are defiant and such and this and that currently in that area are significant numbers, but they're minuscule if you take the population of the city with those same ethnic origins
Hmm.
that are going about their business.
Yeah. Going to work, going, getting their kids to school,
Right. I mean, there's
and just
people.
living life.
Well, yeah, the city is too much. If all the population that's of that ethnic origin in that city would rise up with those same actions,
Oh, yeah. There'd be a civil war.
it would be
Yeah.
a zombie movie.
Well, that right there, you're talking about that little bitty little spot in that whole vast area. That right there is the best example I could give when I talk about the loudest 1%. They're making the loudest noise, so they're getting all the press. That's why there are people in that city who didn't know what was going on until they saw it in the news. And but trust me, believe me, the news is going to be on it like white on rice. Like a dog with a bone, they are not going to let it go because it sells. It's there's got to be strife. There's got to be something.
A further rounding of reality, or not rounding, a clarific or fully attaching aspects of
Hmm.
reality. The media is doing that which you're saying absolutely.
Hmm.
The groups that are involved in that scenario,
Hmm.
I mean the opposing groups,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, one comes from the enforcement arm and the
Hmm.
other one is population arm,
Hmm.
or population arm, just population, and then there's one enforcement arm.
Hmm.
Interestingly, many of those in uniform are of the same
Same
origin,
ethnicity. Yeah.
and and that's a truism. I mean, I'm not saying all of them, but boy, they are.
Hmm.
Um, Even people being brought in from outside, because the forces are made up of variations, but a
Hmm.
good chunk of them are of
Sure.
that group.
Well, that's because they're drawn from the people who apply for those positions and who want to do those jobs are a cross section of the population.
Which begs other questions. But here's the thing: that the media's manipulation is not the only there are various manipulations from all
Sure.
sides occurring here,
Sure.
because what's being somebody posted in my that said something very very insightful. um, the narratives are being used, in other words, solution, in other words, there's a level of a play being performed
Hmm.
for political interests on
Yep.
all sides.
Yep.
And but the problem is, well, I don't like it one bit. The problem is, for various reasons.
Well, I don't
Um,
either.
yeah, the reasonable thing to be is like, well, wait a second, you don't hurt people,
Hmm.
and I'm talking about flat out
Yeah.
on all sides. In order to reach an objective, you don't just leap and you don't hurt one way or the other.
Hmm.
But you could say some confrontations are unavoidable, I guess, at the end of the day. But I take issue, and obviously I'm here in freaking Sweetwater, quite comfortable, and this and that. But and if I were placed in that situation, what would I do? But my go-to, just like what Jordan Peterson says, you don't know until you're placed in a situation.
Yeah.
But my interest is I don't want to see other people hurt.
Hmm.
I don't see one side hurt or the other side hurt. I don't want to see people freaking beat to the ground. I don't want to see the destruction. Like my instinct is that, hey, don't do that.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not under my control.
Nope.
It's not under my control.
Nope. We're both observers. We're observers in the play that's being played out around us. Whether you're looking down south or in your case out west to that spot, or you're looking somewhere else, at the aurora borealis that's being seen down here for us,
Yeah,
or
we don't
you
have
know
we don't have. Do you remember the riots? I filmed them. I don't know if you saw my
yeah,
live at one time.
yeah, I did.
Actually, I said riots. That's wrong. It was a protest. But they sat in the middle of
Hmm.
8th Street and Flagler, just here across the block on
Hmm.
the main road, and the kids were walking down my street,
Hmm.
and I was freaking out because my thinking is that, sure, one thing is a protest if you keep it within bounds, but another thing is if you start doing property destruction, um, uh, hurting other people.
Yeah, that could
Um,
easily be in your front yard, like that.
yeah. So, and they were just crossing, like, and and they and the local county whatnot sent out SWAT after SWAT. The 8th Street was
Hmm.
lined with frickin' vehicles,
Hmm.
and I was watching from here, and then the speakers came on. You have 5 minutes or whatever time to shorter than that to disperse, or you will be in violation. You will be this, and you will be that, and you will be this. And those kids, because they were kids,
Hmm.
demonstrator types and this and that,
Yeah,
little by little within that stretch.
got up and left. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
oh yeah.
Certain police departments just don't play. You can find video on YouTube of some I don't even remember what protest it was. They parked the trailer across the main highway and were blocking traffic. And I don't remember what it was about. That's how memorable their cause is to me. The problem is they did it on the Paiute reservation, and the reservation cops don't play, and they are treated as sovereign. And you can find the video on YouTube. There's a couple of people sitting on this trailer holding up their little signs, and the cop just goes right through the trailer, spins it around right in the middle of traffic, uh, in a big Chevy four wheeler. He just spins it around, gets out of it, and just goes over and picks them up, starts handcuffing them, and just they don't play.
No,
They do not play. You're on their reservation. You live by their rules. And they drug the trailer out of the middle of the road and started flagging traffic. Go. And it's just like, holy cow, that happened in America? No, that happened on the Paiute reservation. So,
that's another variation. There has been um, uh, Native Americans that have been uh, arrested,
mm-hmm.
detained, questioned because because
Well,
for because they assume that because there's a native situation going on too. A lot of these people are partly. in great part or
Mm-hmm.
in some part Native American.
Mm-hmm.
Now, actually, some of them are North. Some of them are of that ethnicity, but they're actually partly North American Native. So
Mm-hmm.
there's people that speak that other language. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why I'm being coy about it, Spanish, that have North America like they're because that's the history of what
Mm-hmm.
Spain. That was the
Yeah,
history.
their own little melting pot, their own little mixtures. Nowadays, you'd
Yeah,
call it a mix master, I guess, because I mean the Spanish came and they settled with some of the native girls, and
yeah, absolutely.
here we go.
So but now they're so now the a lot of or some of these tribes. I was gonna say a lot of that's not. Some of these tribes because I've seen some of the reports, but that's as far as I've gone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they've voiced concerns. They're saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa."
Yeah.
We're concerned because we're not
Mm-hmm.
those, but we do share.
So,
So, like they've explained, I've seen some videos of that. The problem is that there's issues doing things the way that have been done.
mm-hmm.
Um, so things are tense now.
Yeah.
I'd
Well,
rather this not be the case. You know.
we're getting dangerously close to becoming a political podcast, and I know we're both tap dancing around it. But everybody, just mellow out. I mean,
Yeah,
Jim's right. You know, if there's a flame, some idiot will surely try to pour gas on it. You're absolutely right. But
yeah, that's true.
just mellow out. I mean, California's supposed to be chill.
It's such a beautiful place, Mark. I've told you so many times how much
Yeah,
I loved being there. It's such a beautiful. The West is the best.
it's like a Snickers bar, a nice blend of flavors with a few nuts thrown in. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we call California the granola state, Jim, full of fruits, nuts, and flakes, and that is the case. You know, um, it. I just it to me, and maybe I'm naive, but it to me it's just so pointless. It is just so pointless.
Yeah, it is. Well, I feel I agree with you that it feels like, or it's extreme.
You know
It's extreme.
what do you think the outcome is going to be? You know?
Attentions and more bullcrap.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to throw
Perpetual.
a few. We're going to throw a few rocks. They're going to shoot some rubber bullets and throw tear gas. Do you really think you're going to get a good outcome out of this? No, you're not. Somebody's going to get hurt.
You know, uh, I'll say this. I've seen some very disturbing videos
Hmm.
of babies being pulled from mothers' hands while they're being cuffed and just lifted, and the lady's like inconsolable and stuff. I've had to. There's a lot that I've gone like that. The image. So I don't know the context.
Hmm.
If there's a person in the back that's in charge of handling, like I don't know all the extra additional
Hmm.
charge, but the image itself without the tail end and after the fact information is so intense. In many cases, I'm like,
And
nope, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that.
and the poster wanted it that way because they wanted that reaction from you or from whoever watched it.
Well, I'm
It
conscious
was
of.
it was edited that way, and it's supposed to make you feel like that.
I, I'm conscious of the power of media, but that doesn't mean I'm what's the word for it, Mark? We're not affected by it.
Yeah, you're not immune to it. Yeah,
I'm not immune to it.
nobody wants to see that, but we didn't see what happened before that.
That's my point. Like, there's further content now. There's there's I saw, dude, I saw a video where a truck is
Hmm.
circling around just wildly, and freaking people getting trying to get out of the way because it's just and rocks being. And I'm like, dude, it's so look, it's like just watching it inflames one's preconceived notions of what's good, what's bad. It creates you pushing a person to believe one thing or the next, or conclude one thing or the media is, even though these things are happening, but
Do
Go
the
ahead. Go ahead.
thing is, it doesn't have to be the media because you saw that clip. That wasn't the media that put that out. That was somebody with an iPhone.
Well, but it is media.
Well, it's
It's
social media,
social
and
media.
yes, I mean the whatever platform you saw that on allowed it to be posted and didn't take it down, at least not before you saw it anyway. But it's easy for you and me to push a narrative now because we have social media. And if we come up with some sensational thing, for instance, I don't mean to bring up bad thoughts or bad memories, when the pedestrian overpass collapsed right up, virtually right outside your front door, you're not a member of the media, but that video that you had when you were out there walking around talking to people, showing pictures of it or showing views of it, that went over huge. That was a huge video on your channel.
Yeah, that was one that was actually contentious because number one, I was filming my something that happened. Like, you know how I document everything.
Sure.
And that was just another thing. But I got some things. Oh, you're profiting. You're profiting off the. And I'm like, and I even asked maybe Steve and yourself at the time, um, with my concerns. I asked you,
Mm-hmm.
man, do you think? What do you think? I remember
Well,
asking either you or Steve or both
mm-hmm.
of you.
It was both
Um,
of us. Do you remember my response?
I think that you gave me a balance. I can't remember the details, but I
Well,
remember you giving me a balanced answer, and that I can't remember the details.
I,
I'm
I,
gonna.
well, is your evening news profiting off of reporting on it?
Oh yeah, yeah, right, right, right.
And
Yeah,
so, you know, if that generates a little bit of revenue on the AdSense check at the end of the month, good for you.
yeah. I also recorded the various hurricanes. I have them on my
Mm-hmm.
channel. The aftermaths. I've got interviews of neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I'm not an official um,
No,
thing type of guy, but I do like to just interview and document and all that.
and that's my point. You don't need a media. We can do it. We can generate the news cycle. We can create a narrative of our own. We all have the power to do it. And that combined with, the fourth estate, the press, can push a narrative that may or may not be 100% true. So that was my point.
Yeah, well,
So,
it's a given. It's a given that they will report their angle,
mhm,
excluding what they might not want to
yeah.
share with the public.
And that's basically lying by omission, you
Yeah,
know. But never forget that there is somebody in there, no matter what organization, there is somebody in there deciding what goes on the air and what doesn't. You out there with your camera, you decide what goes out there. And it's just as easy for you and I to push a narrative if we want to as it is for them. They're going to get more views because they have the power of power of television, where we have the power of 6 viewers. So I guess time to land the plane. I'm almost due for my pain medication. So
okay. All right. Well, um, we touched on so many different things.
yeah, big time,
Yeah.
big time.
I mean, we should be number one in the ratings, man.
Well, we are. We're number one on our own ratings. We are not only world travelers, we're world renowned. We're legends in our own minds. And
Infamous in our own minds.
all should be blessed. Blessed be all who listen to
All right.
us.
Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time here on the Trampled Underfoot podcast show on YouTube. We also have over on Facebook a page, and I believe that Mark was going to post a song,
Mm-hmm.
video to a song, which has old timey,
Yep.
what is it, a bullhorn
It,
type thing.
a megaphone, Winchester Cathedral.
So that should be interesting to check out, which I'll check out after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so go check that out. And we also have a website, which is trampledunderfootpodcast.com, and you can catch past episodes over there. And nothing, you can download them and such. We're also sponsored by.
Boy, they're slow to respond. Harneal Media. He's not slow to respond. I'm here to tell you, I get a notification in the email that somebody has posted something and they made a comment, and I need to check it out and moderate it. And I will go over and I'll click, okay, that's spam. It needs to go in the spam folder. And I'll go over there, and Steve's already put other posts in the spam folder. And it's like, man, right on the spot. No, he is not slow to respond. He's good. So if you want that kind of service out of your web host, whether you've already got a website or not, you might want to consider checking out Harneal Media. Get over there to harnealmedia.com. There's a link to Harneal Media in every video and live stream on this channel for a reason. And click on that contact us link. And reach out to Steve and ask him what he can do for you. Doesn't matter if you've already got a web host. Doesn't matter if you've already got a website. You don't have Harneal Media. And it does make a difference. He's the only one I'm ever going to recommend. He's very competitively priced, and you get 100% personalized service. So do yourself a favor, head over to harnealmedia.com. That's HARNEAL media.com. Sponsor of Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com.
I was
You
timing.
you've been waiting all night to do that, haven't you?
I was trying to time it so it would fit right in, but see the simple things that bring joy. Um, all right, guys, listen. Do the things that you enjoy, and do them safe this week. Don't get into any mass situations in the middle
No.
of the street.
Mm-hmm.
Try to avoid your. If you have to avoid your latte frappuccinos because they're located in the center of town, you might consider doing the little breakfast place down the road
Yeah.
instead.
Go have breakfast.
If you want to be wild, watch some reruns of Cool in the Gang playing at the Ritz. I don't know. In any event, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why that even connects, but thank you for hanging out. We'll see you next week, same time, same channel. Peace.
Peace.